I still remember the day the eviction notice arrived like it was yesterday. It was a typical sunny Wednesday morning in late April, with a gentle breeze that carried the sweet scent of blooming flowers from the garden outside our apartment complex. My family and I had lived in this complex for as long as I could remember, and it was more than just a home to us. It was our sanctuary, our haven. The complex itself was a beautiful, well-manicured property with lush green lawns, a swimming pool, and a playground where I spent countless hours playing with my siblings and friends. As I recall that day, my mind wanders back to the sound of my mom bustling around the kitchen, preparing breakfast for our family. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and scrambled eggs filled the air, and my stomach growled in anticipation. My dad was sitting at the dining table, sipping his coffee and reading the newspaper, while my siblings and I were arguing over whose turn it was to use the bathroom first. It was a chaotic yet peaceful morning, filled with the familiar sounds and smells of our daily routine. But then, the doorbell rang. My mom wiped her hands on her apron and answered the door, expecting it to be one of our neighbors or perhaps a delivery. But instead, it was the landlord, Mr. Johnson, standing at our doorstep with a stern expression on his face. He handed my mom a formal-looking letter, which she took hesitantly, her eyes scanning the page with a growing sense of unease. As she read the letter, her face turned pale, and she looked like she had been punched in the gut. The room fell silent, and all eyes were on her. She tried to speak, but her voice trembled, and she couldn't get the words out. My dad got up from his seat, concern etched on his face, and took the letter from her hands. As he read it, his expression changed from concern to shock, and finally to anger. The letter was an eviction notice. Mr. Johnson was terminating our lease, citing some minor infractions that we had supposedly committed. We were given 30 days to vacate the premises, or we would be forcibly removed. The news was like a bombshell, dropping on our family and sending us into chaos. My parents tried to negotiate with Mr. Johnson, pleading with him to reconsider, but he was unmoved. He seemed to take pleasure in our misery, his ruthlessness evident in the way he spoke to us. My dad, usually a calm and composed person, was furious, and the argument that ensued was intense. My mom, on the other hand, was devastated, and tears streamed down her face as she begged Mr. Johnson to have mercy on us. As the day went on, our apartment complex, which was once a place of comfort and security, began to feel like a prison. The walls seemed to be closing in on us, and the uncertainty of our future hung over us like a dark cloud. But amidst all the chaos and desperation, a spark of determination ignited within me. I knew that I had to do something, anything, to help my family. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of an epic journey, one that would test my resolve, my courage, and my determination to fight for what was rightfully ours. I remember the days that followed the eviction notice like a never-ending nightmare. The once familiar streets of our neighborhood now seemed cold and unforgiving, a constant reminder of our fragile situation. As we scrambled to find temporary housing, the harsh reality of our circumstances hit us like a ton of bricks. My parents, once pillars of strength and stability, now walked around with a mix of anxiety and desperation etched on their faces. The weight of the world had finally taken its toll on them. The local shelters we visited were a far cry from the warmth and comfort of our own home. Crowded, noisy, and impersonal, they felt more like warehouses for the displaced than havens for the hurting. I saw families with young children, huddled together in small rooms, their eyes sunken from lack of sleep, and their faces dirty from the absence of proper bathing facilities. The air reeked of despair, a potent reminder that we were not alone in our struggle. Social workers and community advocates tried their best to offer support and guidance, but it was clear that they were overstretched and under-resourced. As we navigated this labyrinthine system, I began to feel the emotional toll of the eviction acutely. The anger, the frustration, the sense of injustice. It all swirled together in a toxic cocktail that threatened to consume me. I felt like I was losing myself, like the very foundations of my identity were being torn apart by the forces of circumstance. My parents, too, were struggling to cope. My mother, once a pillar of strength, now broke down in tears at the slightest provocation, while my father withdrew into a shell of silence, unable to confront the reality of our situation. But as I watched my family's life unravel, something within me began to shift. A spark of determination ignited, and I started to formulate a plan to take back control, to fight against the injustices that had been perpetrated against us. It was a plan born of anger, of hurt, and of a deep-seated desire for revenge. I devoured books on real estate law, talked to lawyers, and scoured the internet for information on how to buy and manage properties. The more I learned, the more I became convinced that I could turn our situation around, that I could use this experience as a catalyst for change. As I delved deeper into my research, I started to notice strange inconsistencies in the way the apartment complex was managed. There were whispers of shady dealings, of backroom negotiations, and of corrupt practices that seemed to permeate every level of the system. It was as if the complex was a microcosm of the larger societal problems that had led to our eviction problems of inequality, of discrimination, and of systemic injustice. And I became determined to expose them, to shine a light into the dark recesses of the complex, and to bring those responsible to account. But little did I know, my digging would soon uncover a shocking secret, one that would change everything I thought I knew about our situation, and set me on a path from which there would be no return. As I walked through the city's financial district, the sleek skyscrapers and bustling streets seemed to hum with the rhythm of power and money. It was a world where secrets were currency, and information was the ultimate leverage. I had been searching for answers for what felt like an eternity, driven by the burning desire to uncover the truth behind our eviction. The determination that had been growing inside me since that fateful day now propelled me forward, leading me down a path from which there was no return. It was on one of these days, lost in the maze of suits and briefcases, that I stumbled upon a small, unassuming cafe. The kind of place that seemed to exist outside the hustle and bustle, a quiet refuge amidst the chaos. It was there that I met them, a mysterious informant with an aura of knowing more than they should. Our conversation was brief, yet it opened doors to a world I had never imagined. They spoke of financial fraud, of real estate manipulation, and of the intricate web of deceit that had led to our eviction. They told me of the landlord's dealings, of the hidden accounts and the underhanded tactics used to acquire properties and push out tenants like us. The significance of this discovery hit me like a wave, washing away any remnants of doubt or uncertainty. It was no longer just about revenge, it was about justice. The landlord's actions weren't just personal. They were part of a larger scheme, a scheme that had ruined countless lives. This realization ignited a fire within me, a flame that fueled my resolve and gave me direction. As I left the cafe, the city seemed different. The skyscrapers now loomed as giants, symbols of power and corruption. But I was no longer intimidated. I had a plan beginning to take shape in my mind, a plan that would require allies and resources, but most importantly, courage and conviction. The road ahead would be long and treacherous, filled with unknowns and uncertainties. Yet, with the secret revealed, I felt a sense of purpose I had never felt before. I was no longer just a victim, I was a force to be reckoned with. With this newfound determination, I set out into the city, ready to gather the pieces needed to bring my plan to life. The question was, where would I start? The city was vast, and the players in this game were many. But I had a clue, a thread that could unravel the entire tapestry of deceit, and I was ready to pull it, no matter the cost. The journey was about to get a lot more interesting, and I was just getting started. As I walked out of the meeting with the city official, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had stumbled upon something much bigger than myself. The revelation that our eviction was just a small part of a larger scheme to gentrify our neighborhood had ignited a fire within me. I knew I had to act, but I couldn't do it alone. I needed to gather allies, like-minded individuals who shared my passion for justice and my determination to fight back. I started by attending community meetings at the local center, where I met with community leaders and activists who had been fighting against gentrification for years. They shared their stories, their struggles, and their strategies, and I listened intently, soaking up every word. I was amazed by their dedication, their resilience, and their unwavering commitment to the cause. I knew I had found my tribe, my support network, and I was eager to join forces with them. As I attended more meetings, I met with local business owners who were also affected by the gentrification efforts. They shared their concerns, their fears, and their hopes, and I realized that we were all in this together. We were all fighting for the same thing, the right to remain in our homes, to preserve our community, and to protect our way of life. I also met with potential investors who were interested in supporting our cause, and I was amazed by their generosity, their vision, and their willingness to take a stand. But as I began to build my network, I faced initial hurdles and skepticism. Some people doubted my ability to take on the system, to challenge the powerful interests that were driving the gentrification efforts. Others questioned my motives, my tactics, and my chances of success. I faced criticism, scrutiny, and even ridicule, but I refused to be deterred. I knew that I was on the right path, that I was fighting for something that mattered, and that I had the support of my community behind me. As I sat in a local cafe, sipping coffee and discussing strategies with my newfound allies, I felt a sense of pride, a sense of purpose, and a sense of belonging. I knew that I was no longer alone, that I had a team of dedicated individuals who shared my vision, my passion, and my commitment. We were a diverse group, with different backgrounds, different experiences, and different perspectives, but we were united in our quest for justice, for equality, and for the right to remain in our homes. And as we brainstormed ideas, shared resources, and coordinated our efforts, I realized that we were not just fighting against gentrification. We were building a movement. We were creating a network of support, a web of solidarity, and a community of resistance. We were proving that even in the face of adversity, even in the face of overwhelming odds, we could come together, we could organize, and we could fight back. And as our network grew, so did our confidence, our determination, and our resolve. We were no longer just a group of individuals. We were a force to be reckoned with, a force that would not be silenced, a force that would not be defeated. As I stood in the midst of the whirlwind I had created, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and trepidation. The movement to reclaim our home, to fight against the injustice of eviction, had gained momentum. But with every step forward, the resistance grew stronger. The landlord, once a shadowy figure, now emerged with allies, determined to discredit me and undermine our cause. I recall the first time I received a call from a local journalist asking for my side of the story. I thought it was an opportunity to spread our message, to garner more support. But as I sat in the news studio, under the glare of the cameras, I realized that the questions were not as innocent as they seemed. The journalist, smiling warmly, yet with a hint of skepticism, asked about my qualifications to lead such a movement, about my past, and about the legitimacy of our claims. I faced a barrage of inquiries, each one designed to poke holes in our story, to make me doubt myself. But I had prepared for this. I had studied the art of public relations, learning how to navigate the complex web of crisis management and political maneuvering. I spoke clearly, confidently, and from the heart, addressing each concern with facts and personal anecdotes. I shared stories of my family, of our struggles, and of our dreams. And as I left the studio, I felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that I had not only defended our cause but had also humanized it. However, not everyone was convinced. Skepticism followed me to City Hall, where I met with officials who seemed more interested in the legalities of our situation than in the human aspect. They spoke of zoning laws, of property rights, and of the economic impact of our movement. I listened, taking in every word, and then I shared our story again, this time tailored to their concerns. I spoke of community, of the importance of preserving the essence of our neighborhood, and of the potential for positive change. The critics, however, were relentless. They questioned my motives, suggesting that this was a personal vendetta rather than a genuine attempt to create change. They criticized my methods, calling them radical and disruptive. And they predicted our failure, saying that we were fighting a losing battle against the entrenched powers of real estate and politics. But with each challenge, I found a way to adapt, to evolve. I realized that strategic decisions were crucial, that every move had to be calculated to maximize our impact while minimizing the backlash. I engaged with our critics, addressing their concerns and alleviating their fears. I worked tirelessly, attending public forums, meeting with potential supporters, and spreading our message through every channel available. And then, just as it seemed like the pendulum was swinging against us, a major breakthrough occurred. A prominent figure, respected and influential in our community, stepped forward in support of our cause. Their endorsement brought with it a wave of credibility, shifting the balance of power in our favor. Suddenly, the critics were silenced, and our momentum became unstoppable. As I look back, I realize that the challenges and the critics were not obstacles to be feared, but opportunities to be seized. They tested my resolve, sharpened my strategy, and ultimately made our victory sweeter. The journey was not easy, but with each step I grew more determined, more resilient. And now, as we stand on the cusp of achieving our goal, I am filled with a sense of hope and anticipation. The future, once uncertain, now looks brighter than ever. I still remember the day that changed everything. The day I stood in front of the courtroom, my heart pounding in my chest, as I awaited the verdict that would determine the fate of my family's home. The air was thick with tension. the smell of old wood and stale air filling my nostrils as I glanced around at the unfamiliar faces, all of whom seemed to hold their breath in anticipation. It had been months since we were evicted, months of struggling to make ends meet, of living in a small, cramped apartment that was barely big enough for the three of us. But I had never given up. I had poured every ounce of energy into fighting for our rights, into proving that the eviction was unjust and that we deserved to stay in our home. And then, it happened. The judge's voice rang out, clear and firm, as he delivered the verdict. We had won. The eviction was deemed unlawful, and we were entitled to return to our home. I felt a surge of emotion, a mix of relief, joy, and vindication, as I turned to my family and saw the tears of happiness streaming down their faces. But our victory was not without its challenges. The landlord, furious at the setback, vowed to appeal the decision, and we knew that the battle was far from over. We would have to face even more hurdles, more obstacles, as we fought to reclaim our home. I recall the landlord's face, red with anger, his eyes blazing with determination, as he vowed to take us down. As I walked out of the courtroom, I was met with a surprise. A key witness, someone who had been watching our case from the beginning, stepped forward and offered to testify on our behalf. It was a whistleblower, someone who had been working behind the scenes to expose the landlord's wrongdoings, and their testimony could be the nail in the coffin. I was introduced to an investigative journalist, a fierce and determined woman who had been following our case and was determined to bring the truth to light. Together, we pored over documents, conducted interviews, and gathered evidence, building a case that would be impossible to ignore. As I looked back on our journey, I realized just how far we had come. From the darkest depths of despair to the brightest heights of hope, we had faced every challenge with courage and determination. And now, with the momentum on our side, I knew that we were ready for the final push. We would take on the landlord, the system, and anyone else who dared to stand in our way. We would fight for our home, for our rights, and for the justice that we deserved. But little did I know, unforeseen complications were just around the corner, waiting to throw a wrench into our plans. The journey ahead would be fraught with uncertainty, but I was ready. I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that we had already overcome so much. The question was, what would happen next? Would we finally be able to reclaim our home, or would the system find a way to stop us? Only time would tell. I still remember the day I thought I was finally closing in on my dream of buying the entire apartment complex where my family was evicted. It had been a long and arduous journey, filled with setbacks and challenges that tested my resolve at every turn. But as I stood there, ready to sign the papers and make it all mine, a nagging sense of uncertainty crept in. It started with whispers from within my own support network. People I had considered allies and friends began to express their doubts about my ability to lead this endeavor to its successful conclusion. We would meet in cramped, windowless rooms, the fluorescent lights above humming like a chorus of cynics, as they laid out their concerns. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" they'd ask, their voices laced with a skepticism that made my skin crawl. I had always been the driving force behind this project, the one who pushed and prodded and cajoled everyone into believing in my vision. But now, as the finish line loomed ahead, it seemed that not everyone was as convinced as I was. External pressures began to mount as well. Lawyers and real estate agents, with their slick suits and condescending smiles, would throw up hurdle after hurdle, questioning the legality of my purchase, the feasibility of my plans, and the very sanity of my endeavors. I found myself shuttling from one sterile, beige-colored office to another, listening to them drone on about zoning laws and property values, my mind numb and my heart heavy. And then there were the strategy meetings. Oh, the strategy meetings. Endless hours of brainstorming and planning, of trying to anticipate every possible contingency, every potential pitfall. The rooms were always filled with the smell of stale coffee and burnt dreams, the whiteboards scrawled with diagrams and flowcharts that seemed to make less and less sense as the days went by. I began to feel like I was drowning in a sea of uncertainty, my leadership challenged at every turn, my confidence shaken to its core. For the first time, I felt a creeping sense of doubt. Had I bitten off more than I could chew? Was I truly ready to take on the responsibilities that came with owning an entire apartment complex? The questions swirled in my head like a maelstrom, making it hard to sleep at night, hard to focus during the day. I began to wonder if it was all worth it, the stress, the anxiety, the endless struggles. And yet, even as I stood there, poised on the precipice of doubt and uncertainty, something within me refused to give up. A spark of determination, a flame of defiance, still burned bright. I thought of my family, of the struggles we had faced, of the injustices we had suffered. I thought of the people who had believed in me, who had supported me on this journey. And I knew that I couldn't turn back now. I had to push forward no matter what. The decision ahead of me was clear. I could let my doubts consume me, or I could rise above them and forge a new path. The outcome of my quest for justice and ownership hung in the balance, and I knew that whatever I chose, it would change the course of my life forever. As I stood amidst the ruins of my family's past, the weight of our eviction still fresh in my mind, I couldn't help but feel the burden of responsibility on my shoulders. The once familiar walls of our apartment complex now seemed like a distant memory, a bittersweet reminder of what we had lost. But as I gazed out at the sprawling buildings, a spark within me ignited. It was a flame of determination, of defiance, and of a resolve to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I wandered through the desolate streets, my feet carrying me towards the places of solitude that had become my refuge. The old oak tree in the park, its gnarled branches twisted by time and weather, stood as a silent witness to my turmoil. I sat beneath its shade, the rough bark a stark contrast to the soft grass beneath me. The city sounds faded into the background as I delved into my own thoughts, the turmoil within me threatening to spill over. It was then that I remembered the words of my mentor, Mrs. Jenkins, who had always been a source of guidance and comfort. Her words echoed in my mind. The greatest risk is not taking any risk. She had always emphasized the importance of calculated risk-taking, of weighing the pros and cons, and of trusting my instincts. As I sat there, the cool breeze rustling the leaves above me, I realized that this was my moment of truth. The factors influencing my decisions swirled around me like a vortex. The fear of failure, the uncertainty of success, and the potential cost of my actions all threatened to overwhelm me. But I knew that I couldn't let fear dictate my choices. I thought of my family, of the struggles we had faced, and of the sacrifices we had made. I thought of the legacy I wanted to leave behind, of the impact I wanted to make. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in a warm orange glow, I made my decision. I would buy the entire apartment complex. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a mix of excitement and trepidation. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, that there would be obstacles and challenges along the way. But I also knew that it was the right thing to do. The immediate aftermath of my decision was a whirlwind of activity. I pored over financial reports, met with lawyers and investors, and worked tirelessly to bring my vision to life. The reactions of those around me were mixed. Some hailed me as a hero, a champion of the underdog, while others dismissed me as a fool, a naive idealist. But I didn't let their opinions sway me. I knew that I had made the right choice, that this was my chance to reclaim my family's legacy and to create a new future. As I looked out at the apartment complex, now a symbol of my determination and resolve, I knew that the stage was set for the final confrontation. The events that would unfold would be unpredictable, treacherous, and potentially life-changing. But I was ready. I had made my decision, and now it was time to see it through to the end. The question was, what lay ahead? Only time would tell. As I stood before the apartment complex, now mine, I couldn't help but think of the journey that had brought me to this moment. The landlord, Mr. Johnson, had evicted my family, leaving us with nothing. But I had worked tirelessly, determined to turn my fate around, and now I was about to confront the man who had changed my life forever. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the complex as I made my way to Mr. Johnson's office. I had been preparing for this moment for what felt like an eternity, and I was ready. My heart was racing, but my resolve was unwavering. I was going to make sure that Mr. Johnson understood the gravity of his actions and the impact they had had on my family and me. As I entered the office, I saw Mr. Johnson sitting behind his desk, a smug look on his face. He thought he had won, that he had gotten away with everything. But he was wrong. I took a deep breath and began to speak, my voice firm and steady. Mr. Johnson, you evicted my family without any regard for our well-being. You left us to fend for ourselves, to struggle and to suffer. But I'm here to tell you that your actions have not gone unnoticed. I've worked hard to turn my life around, and now I'm in a position to take back what's rightfully mine. Mr. Johnson sneered at me, but I could see the faintest glimmer of fear in his eyes. He knew he was in trouble. You'll never be able to afford this place, he spat. You'll never be able to make the payments. But I just smiled. I had been expecting this. I've already made the payments, Mr. Johnson. I've bought the entire complex, And as of today, you're no longer the landlord, you're just a tenant like everyone else. The look on Mr. Johnson's face was priceless. He was stunned, shocked, and outraged all at once. He spluttered and spat, trying to come up with some semblance of a response, but I just shook my head. It's over, Mr. Johnson. Your reign of terror is at an end. And as for me, I'm just getting started. I'm going to make sure that this complex is a place where people can live in peace and dignity without fear of eviction or harassment. I'm going to make a difference, and I'm going to start right here. As I turned to leave, I saw a figure standing in the doorway. It was Mrs. Thompson, one of the tenants who had been a thorn in Mr. Johnson's side for years. She was smiling, a look of triumph on her face. "Well done," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've done it. You've taken back what's rightfully yours." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving me to savor the moment. The immediate aftermath was chaotic, with tenants cheering and congratulating me on my victory. Mr. Johnson, on the other hand, was left to pick up the pieces, to try and come to terms with the fact that he was no longer in control. But I didn't have time to dwell on that. I had a new era to usher in, a new beginning to forge, and I was ready. I was ready to take on the challenges that lay ahead to make a difference in the lives of those around me. I was ready to start anew. As I stand here, looking out over the apartment complex I now own, I am filled with a mix of emotions, pride, sadness, and a sense of closure. It's hard to believe it's been years since my family and I were evicted from this very place, forced to leave behind the only home we had ever known. But life has a way of coming full circle, and now I am the one in control, the one who gets to decide the fate of this complex and the community that calls it home. I think back on my journey, on all the struggles and hardships I faced, and I am reminded of the person I used to be. I was young, naive, and angry, feeling like the world was against me. But as I navigated the twists and turns of life, I began to realize that I had a choice. I could let my circumstances define me, or I could use them as an opportunity to grow and learn. I chose the latter, and it's a decision that has brought me to where I am today. As I look around at the revamped complex, I see a symbol of renewal, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for a brighter future. The buildings have been renovated, the grounds have been landscaped, and a sense of community has been fostered among the residents. It's a place where people can come together, where they can feel safe and supported, and where they can build a better life for themselves and their families. I think about the people who have been a part of my journey, the ones who have helped shape me into the person I am today. There are those who have supported me, who have believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And then there are those who have challenged me, who have pushed me to grow and to learn. I am grateful for all of them, for the lessons they have taught me and the love they have shown me. As I look to the future, I am excited to see what's in store for this community. I have plans to continue renovating and improving the complex, to make it an even better place for the people who call it home. I want to create programs and services that will help residents succeed, that will give them the tools and resources they need to build a better life. I want to foster a sense of community, to bring people together and help them support one another. But even as I look to the future, I know that I will never forget my past. I will never forget the struggles I faced, the hardships I overcame, and the lessons I learned. I will never forget the people who helped me along the way, who supported me and believed in me. And I will never forget the sense of redemption I feel, the knowledge that I have taken something negative and turned it into something positive. As I close this chapter of my life, I am filled with a sense of hope and optimism. I know that there will be challenges ahead, that there will be ups and downs, but I am ready. I am ready to face whatever comes my way, to use the lessons I have learned to make a positive impact on the world. I am ready to take the next step, to see where life will take me, and to make the most of every opportunity that comes my way. And so, as I stand here, looking out over the apartment complex, I am filled with a sense of pride and accomplishment. I have come full circle, from being evicted to owning the complex, and it's a journey that has taught me so much about myself and about life. I know that I will always carry the lessons of my past with me, but I am excited to see what the future holds. I am excited to see the impact I can make, the difference I can create, and the life I can build. I am excited to take the next step, to start this new chapter, and to see where it will take me.